We are faced, perpetually, with a single fundamental choice: to build with an eye towards permanence, or to build knowing that all structures are temporary. It is the choice between believing we have transcended nature's laws and acknowledging that we are subject to them. This is the dilemma Thomas Cole's The Course of Empire. Destruction, 1836, does not merely depict, but enacts with terrifying Gothic grandeur. In this fourth painting of his quintet, Cole freezes the catastrophic pivot. Yet, to see this work solely as a moralistic warning is to miss half its somber genius. Destruction is a paradox, both a condemnation of hubris and a profound elegy for beauty itself, for the sublime and terrible cost of human ambition. It captures the moment the empire's gleaming, arrogant certainty is swallowed by violent chaos, forcing us to ask, is this the price of reaching for the zenith? And if so, was the vision ever worth the cataclysm? Cole's Destruction is often analyzed for its masterful composition and its place within the Romantic tradition. But to view it solely as art is to miss its function as a forensic blueprint and a tragic ode. Every visual element operates as a tool of psychological and social control, first employed by the empire to glorify itself, and now wielded by Cole to indict its folly, even as he mourns the passing of its splendor. The lighting is not merely dramatic, it is apocalyptic theater. A sickly, jaundiced light, the color of a bruise, struggles through churning smoke, while hellish flares erupt from collapsing structures. This is the empire's own manufactured illumination, the fire of forges, conquest, and spectacle, now turned inwards to consume it. The lighting creates a psychological claustrophobia, a closing in of consequences. It denies the viewer the solace of a benevolent sun or a clear horizon, mirroring the closed ideological system that allowed for no reality outside its own grandeur. Yet, within this gloom, Cole paints with a perverse beauty. The glow on the wet marble, the lurid reflections in the harbor. These are the brush strokes of melancholic reverence. He destroys, but cannot help but make the destruction breathtaking. The scale is engineered to dwarf and devastate. The monumental architecture, those colossal columns and sprawling bridges which symbolized invincible power, here becomes the engine of ruin. Scale is no longer a tool of inspiration, but of crushing inevitability. A massive statue, a god or hero of the state, is shown decapitated. Its stone head crashes into the waves, a visual scream of fallen ideology. The architecture does not just fall, it actively murders, crushing the citizens who believed in its protection. Cole uses scale to illustrate the cruel paradox of hubris. The taller you build your idols, the harder they fall upon you. And yet, the sheer grandeur of the ruins evokes the romantic fascination with the sublime ruin, suggesting a strange, awful awe is owed even to failure of this magnitude. Color is stripped of life and reason. The serene blues and verdant greens of the earlier paintings are gone. In their place is a frenzied palette of incendiary reds, ominous blacks, and lurid, watery greens. This is not a color scheme of nature, but of violence, fever, and poison. The sea, once a pathway for commerce and conquest, is now a churning bile, swallowing marble and flesh with equal indifference. Color here acts as a psychological trigger, repulsing the viewer from any sanitized notion of a noble fall. This is visceral, ugly, and bloody dissolution. Yet, even here, Cole's artistry complicates a simple moral. The rich, dramatic contrasts are visually arresting. We are repelled and mesmerized in the same glance. Finally, the composition is a vortex, a deliberate unraveling of the rigid order of consummation. Where that painting was all balanced horizontals and serene symmetry, destruction is a chaos of violent diagonals. The central bridge, a symbol of connection and engineering triumph, is ruptured, its fractured line pointing like an accusatory finger towards the heart of the storm. The eye is not guided, but assaulted, dragged from one atrocity to the next. This compositional chaos is the ultimate deconstruction of the empire's myth of control. Yet, this very chaos is meticulously composed. Cole choreographs the collapse, suggesting that even in its death throes, the empire imposes a terrible, tragic order. Its fall has a dreadful, predictable logic. The terrifying power of destruction lies not in its distance from us, but in its proximity and its painful ambiguity. We build our own gleaming cities on cliffs' edges every day, often with a similar mix of ambition, myopia, and genuine belief in creating something beautiful. Observe our digital empires. We construct sprawling, interconnected networks, monuments to connectivity and knowledge that parallel Cole's bridges and forums. Yet, these too are built on fragile substrates. We see the smoke on our own horizons not as abstract chaos, but in the specific cascading failures of platforms like Facebook, Meta, during crises of democracy, where algorithms optimized for engagement became tools for societal discord. We witness the digital decapitation of corporate or political brands with the relentless efficiency of Cole's falling statue, their reputations crumbling overnight in a vortex of viral outrage. Our social fabric, stretched taut over this framework, rips along familiar fault lines. And yet, we cannot simply wish these creations away. They contain profound utility and connection. Their potential beauty and their latent destructiveness are intertwined, just as in Cole's marbled city. Consider our environmental and economic brinkmanship. The empire in Cole's painting believed it had subdued nature. Our contemporary parallel is not vague, but etched in specific events. The hubristic collapse of the Soviet Union, an empire that built vast monolithic systems in defiance of human and ecological reality, only to see them implode from within. Or consider the 2008 financial crisis, where the gleaming, complex architecture of global finance, a modern marvel, proved to be built on the rotten foundation of toxic debt, collapsing with a vortex-like speed that crushed the innocent. The sickly, jaundiced light finds its correlate in the orange skies over California or Australia, a direct result of a civilization that still operates on a thesis of dominion. We continue our forums, debating quarterly growth as the storm gathers. The tragic recognition Cole forces upon us is that the very engines of our comfort and grandeur are the ones priming the cataclysm. And on a personal scale, how often do we construct lives of precarious magnificence? We build careers on unsustainable pillars of perpetual hustle, echoing the empire's obsession with perpetual growth. The psychological collapse that follows, the burnout, the crisis of meaning, is a private destruction. The vortex of anxiety, the feeling of foundations giving way, mirrors the chaos on Cole's canvas. We are both the arrogant architect and the drowning citizen of our own lives. The philosophical anchor, the unheeded dialectic, and the elegy for progress. The worldview Cole painstakingly renders finds its most potent philosophical framework not in a strict application of Hegel, but in the broader, more accessible concept of the dialectic. The idea that any established order, a thesis, inevitably generates its own opposition, antithesis, leading to a new synthesis. Cole may not have cited Hegel, but he painted the dialectic in its most violent phase. The empire's thesis, its ideology of unchecked power, luxury, and domination, necessarily bred its antithesis. This antithesis is not just the invading hordes at the gate, but the internal rot, the moral decay of luxury, the resentment of the exploited, the ecological disregard, the strategic overextension. Destruction is the canvas where thesis and antithesis meet in catastrophic collision. The synthesis, chillingly previewed, is the silent desolation to come. The empire's fatal error was a failure of dialectical thinking. Its leaders, in their marble forums, believed the debate was over, that their thesis was the final, perfect form. Cole shows us the price of that intellectual closure. However, to read the painting only as a warning is to miss Cole's own melancholic synthesis. As a romantic, he was deeply ambivalent about progress. The painting is also an elegy. It mourns the loss of the art, the architecture, the sheer human achievement being drowned in the harbor. The glorious, broken statue is a symbol of fallen hubris, but it is also a beautiful, ruined thing. Cole condemns the empire's choice, but he does not dismiss its dreams. He understood that the drive to build the sublime and the propensity to court destruction are often threads of the same rope. Destruction is not a simplistic sermon. It is a profound, ambivalent warning etched in oil and tempest. The message it howls across the centuries is one of sober, urgent clarity, tinged with sorrow. Recognize the dialectic in which you are embedded. The choice presented at the outset is reframed. It is not between building and not building, but between building with dialectical awareness or with blind arrogance. The former understands that every system contains the seeds of its own potential destruction and builds with humility, resilience, and an eye for the unintended consequence. The latter builds monuments to its own permanence on the cliff's edge. To take this message into the rest of life is to cultivate a dual vision. It is to build, create, and strive, but to do so with a conscious ear for the antithesis our creations may spawn. It is to look at our gleaming digital, financial, and personal architectures and ask not just, is it strong? But, what will it look like when it fails? And have I mitigated that harm? It is to find the humility to see that progress is not a linear ascent, but a cyclical, often tragic drama. Cole's final devastating lesson is that the zenith is always an illusion. The only true foundation lies not in denying the wheel's turn or the dialectic's clash, but in building with a reverence for the forces that will one day reclaim it all. We must build for the long arc, not the fleeting peak, and find meaning not in imperishable stone, but in the dignity of the effort itself, conducted in the long gathering shadow of our own potential destruction. If this vision of our own precarious zenith resonated with you, the beauty, the warning, the terrifying clarity of that storm, then let's continue this conversation. Smash that like button if you believe we need this kind of art to hold up a mirror to our age. Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the art that doesn't just decorate walls, but dismantles assumptions. And if you feel, as I do, that this painting deserves to be a constant, haunting presence in your space, check the link in the description. We have a source for quality prints of Cole's destruction. Own this masterpiece, not just as decoration, but as a daily reminder, a sovereign and somber guardian for your study wall, asking you every day what you are building and upon what foundation. I hope to find you again, and thank you sincerely for listening.